Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another one of my Dota 2 hero guides. Today we're going to be taking a look at Mars. Before we jump into the video, I just wanted to say if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things, it really helps. And if you want to see more content into the future, please consider clicking the Patreon link down below and going to my Patreon, signing up for coaching, or just supporting me in general for that $5 or $10 a month. It really helps because for whatever reason, YouTube has not monetized my channel. So I make absolutely no money for making all this content. So in order to keep up making content in the future, if you guys really like it and you want to see more of it, please consider supporting if you can. Now that we got that out of the way, let's jump back to the video. So Mars is an offlaner, pretty much only played in the offlane role. And how do we think about Mars in general? Well, the first thing you can think about is his ultimate. He has a great big AoE team fight ultimate, which is really good, obviously for causing chaos, for controlling an area, for, you know, every time it's off cooldown, you can look to take a big team fight, these kinds of things. It scales well into the late game. It's always going to be pretty good in that way. So you can think about him as, you know, your quintessential offlaner in that way. But the other thing you can think about Mars is you can think about him as a good physical damage dealer, in that a lot of offlaners, you know, they have a magic damage component, or they have something, you know, some kind of other way that they impact the fights other than just, you know, their big ultimate or whatever. But Mars is actually really big with physical damage. He does a lot of physical damage. He also does have an ability that allows him to tank up. So if he's actually facing you, instead, he's like the opposite of Bristleback, kind of. Basically, he's kind of bristle front, I guess you could say. A lot of people say that about him jokingly. He's very tanky if you are attacking him like straight on, head on. So he's kind of like Bristleback in that way, but he also does a lot of physical damage. So he's actually an offlaner that is very relevant in the pro scene because he just has this control. He has these abilities that allow him to always be relevant, but he's also really good in pubs, I think, because you can kind of build physical damage items on him. You can kind of almost be a carry, but still do the offlaner things that you would normally do, because the offlaner things that he does, they're all just innate with his spells, but then you can build physical damage and do a ton of damage. You can actually do like more damage than a carry. You can blow people up. You can like one-shot supports on this hero. So that's kind of how to think about this hero. But he can also build the other things that, you know, if you need more like team fight, if you need more control, if you need more things to catch people out, he can kind of build whatever you need him to build, but he just has those options and he can do a lot of physical damage. So that's mainly how we think about Mars. Just your typical all-around decent offlaner with a good ultimate that can also do physical damage and is also kind of like Bristleback, but from the front. So that's how to think about Mars. Now let's jump in and take a look at his abilities. So now that we understand Mars in general, we can take a look at his abilities and see how he's able to be that good all-around offlaner like I talked about. So first, we're going to take a look at Spear of Mars. So we can see Spear of Mars has a pretty big AoE if you look at that green circle there. And basically what you do is you just throw this ability out in a direction that shoots out a spear for the entire AoE like we see there. So we're going to go to free spells. So you can pretty much shoot it in any direction. It'll also hit all the creeps in that line. So we can see it's very good for farming, which is one thing. But the real main thing that it does is it takes one hero and it pins them to an object, like a tree or a wall, some kind of cliff like we see here, and it just throws them to that thing. So we can see there's a tree right there. I threw the spear at Mars. It did damage, but it also pushed him back all the way to the tree. It also works on cliffs. It also pushes them back the entire distance until they hit something. So we see the trees right there. It barely pushes Axe back at all, but it does damage, and it stuns him, and it pushes him, and it makes him hit that tree. But if there's nothing there, let's say I'm going to throw it in this direction, the Mars will shoot the spear out, and the axe will go all the way back to the further distance. So this can be good and bad. It can be something where, if somebody's chasing you, you can throw it behind you. Then, they're going to have to try to catch up again. Or it can be something where it's a little bit of a skill shot because you don't want to throw it at them, if they're half health and you're not going to secure the kill, and you throw it and there's nothing to pin them on and they just, fly a super far distance, and now you can't chase them down anymore. So that happens a lot with Mars if people don't really know how to play him, or, you're not really used to playing him and there's nothing to pin the hero on, that you can kind of screw up that ability and ruin a lot of fights or a lot of chases or a lot of kills in that way. So it is a little bit of a skill shot. It's something you need to perfect or make sure you're throwing it out in the right way at the right time with an object behind it, etc., etc. So that Spear of Mars, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. It also does magical damage and has a pretty decent cooldown. But like I said, it's a farming tool, it's a stun tool, it's a damage tool, those kinds of things, a positioning tool as well. So that's Spear. Now we're going to take a look at God's Rebuke, his next ability. And this is the physical damage ability that scales with physical damage and minus armor, all those kinds of things. It's basically a critical damage strike, and what he does with this is instead of using his spear, he uses his shield. So he uses his shield, and we just throw out like a hit right there, and you see there's an AoE of that kind of black mark on the ground, and it does damage to everything in that AoE in front of Mars in the direction that you click it. It also pushes enemies back a little bit. So you can see there, it pushed the Mars back a little bit, so it's another kind of like positioning tool as well. The other big thing that it does is it also slows. So we can see there, I hit Axe and it slowed him very briefly for a short amount of time, but it's very, very good to combo this with Spear, because basically what you do is you do this, and then they're slowed, and it makes it a lot easier to hit your Spear. So it's just a good way to combo this. The other thing that it does, like I said, with scaling with physical damage is you can buy these minus armor abilities or items, and it just makes you do so much damage with this God's Rebuke. You can see there, obviously, Axe doesn't have any items right now, but that did half damage to a level 13 Axe. That's pretty crazy. Later on in the game, if you get some of these damage items, you can literally one-shot support. It's actually insane. So that's the way this hero will scale in that way. So that's God's Rebuke. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. It also does a lot of damage to like creeps. It's another farming ability. So with these two abilities together, you can farm camps, you can farm waves, all those kinds of things a lot, which is really, really good. The one thing I did want to say though is that keep in mind that it does happen like right in front of Mars, this whole God's Rebuke, and it pushes them back. So he has a pretty big like hero, you know, his just hero is pretty big. So sometimes you'll feel like a creep or an enemy is in front of you, but they're really kind of behind you. They're like next to you. So let's see if I can show you this here. Let's see if it'll work here. So yeah, see how I missed Axe there? You would think that the Axe is kind of, you know, he should get hit by an AoE thing in front of you, but really he's kind of just to the side. So this will happen on Mars occasionally. Just keep that in mind. You don't want to be like right on top of them. Just keep them in front of you a little bit, because sometimes you will miss your God's Rebuke if it feels like they're right on top of you, if they're right in front of you, but they're actually not. So just a little thing. Sometimes it happens. I see people do it. I've done it a couple times when I first started playing Mars. So just keep that in mind with God's Rebuke. Next, we're going to look at Bulwark. This is a pretty straightforward. It's like a passive ability, but it does have a little active component. Basically what this does is it makes him bristleback, but bristle front. We can see when he's getting attacked by the Axe there's a little animation that happens. Let's get away from this dummy target. It'll probably be better. There's a little animation that happens, and you hear this noise, and basically he takes extremely reduced damage from the front and from the side, so it's very similar to Bristleback in that way. But it's only from the front, so we can see from the back he's taking more damage. So it's just a good way to kind of sit in the fights and take a lot of reduced damage. The other thing is you can activate it, and then you actually have reduced movement speed, and you can walk backwards facing a direction, which is very unique for heroes in Dota. Not pretty much, I don't even know if any other hero can really do this, but it's very good for tanking, for running away, and also trying to survive, those kinds of things. It's very good for that. The other thing that it's good for is it's actually really good against ranged heroes. So we'll see this here. I will activate this in front of this range creep, and what will happen is you can see that the range creep's attacking this creep, but every once in a while his projectiles will just come and hit me. And that's because basically what it does is it redirects projectiles to you in an AoE. And so this can be very, very annoying for enemy carries, like, let's say, Medusa, Luna, Drow, any ranged carry that you're laning against. If you have 1 point in Bulwark, you can just walk up to the lane, press it, and then a bunch of their like attempts to last hit will just get redirected to you. So it's a really good way to do that. It's also a good way to redirect projectiles from enemies in team fights and those kinds of things, because you're obviously really tanky in the front. You're helping to protect your allies, your supports, even your carry or whatnot if you're going to activate that, those kinds of things. So it's just a really good all-around ability, especially when you activate it against ranged heroes. So those are all of Mars's normal abilities. Now let's take a look at his big team fight ultimate, like I talked about. So basically what this is it's a giant arena. So we press it in the AoE there, and then an arena pops up, and you can see basically Axe cannot run out of the arena, or else he gets damaged and hit by these shields. The same thing is true for if you pop the arena and there's somebody outside of it. Basically the enemies cannot walk into it. They also cannot like right click if they are ranged. They can't right click into it, which is really good. Now if they pop BKB or they have some kind of mobility spell, they can still get into it. So it's not just like Chrono or something like that. They can get into it or get out of it if they have BKB, but they can't if they just, it's early in the game. It's very hard to escape. So the way that you combo this is probably pretty straightforward, pretty simple if you don't know already. You basically pop this, you God's Rebuke to slow them, and then you spear them into the wall. And then they take damage, they're stunned, so on and so forth. You can start clicking them. The enemy can, or your allies can follow up. Those kinds of things. It also kind of prevents the enemy from helping out. So it's a very, very good team fight ability where it can just isolate one person. It can kill them. It also offers that map control or that area control like you kind of see there. But the other thing it does is it also gives vision. It destroys trees. So let's say there's somebody in the trees here and I want to find them. I can just do this. It gives me vision of the entire area and I kill all of the trees. So it's very, very good for kind of controlling any area on the map when you have it up, when you want a team fight. So that's pretty much how to combo all that. The main way that you're going to do this, though, is usually with a blink dagger. Now, sometimes you won't buy blink, but usually you'll just blink in. You know, you see somebody, so you blink in, you God's Rebuke, you arena, and then you throw this. Or you can either do it you can do the other way. You don't have to God's Rebuke first. You can either, let's say, refresh. You can then you can blink in, arena, God's Rebuke, and then spear them. So it just depends on what you want to do. Like if they have a blink dagger, usually you want to God's Rebuke them first, because if you jump in an arena and don't hit them, they'll just blink out. So it just depends, what items they have. So usually you kind of want to jump in, God's Rebuke them first, so that they can't react to blink, and then arena and then spear, because usually you'll be able to arena and then spear in the time that they are slowed, those kinds of things. If somebody has BKB, though, sometimes you don't even want to arena. You just want to jump in and spear as soon as possible to hit a tree or something like that, because, if they have chance to pop BKB, which they still could react, it's just one of those things. You're probably not going to be able to pop BKB and then, or pop arena and then spear them in the time that it takes, for them to pop BKB. So just keep that in mind. So that's pretty much how to use all of his abilities in concert. The last thing I'm going to show you is Yules is also a potential item on this hero. Is basically what you can do is you can actually spear people out of Yules, kind of like Marana arrow out of Yules. So basically, if the spear or the arrow for Marana is like inside of the hero when they land, it's pretty much like frame perfect, where they will get stunned or they will get hit by this spear after the Yule. So we can do this, wait for him to land, throw this, and then we see he landed basically on top of the spear, and then the spear immediately took him and pinned him to the tree. So it's just one of those things that if, there's mobility heroes like Storm Spirit or Ember Spirit, somebody that can easily get away, that has small cast animations that they have to do, you can easily pin them and stun them here with this Yule's combo. So just keep that in mind. That is something that you can use with Mars. I'm not going to cover his Agnum Scepter or Shard. You can look at them for yourself. They're not the biggest of deal. They don't really change the hero all that much. So that's Mars. Those are his abilities. Now let's jump into a game and see how he's played. So now we're jumping into a replay here of Collapse playing Mars offlane. And basically what I'm going to show you in the beginning of this, laning stage is that Mars, you pretty much always take your God's Rebuke level 1, but you pretty much level up these two spells early. Like, you don't really take Bulwark unless you're trying to do that, ranged laning trick like I talked about, because these spells are just so good for pushing out the wave and for also killing once you get level 6. But largely on this hero, you're kind of just looking to farm, and you're not like super tanky. You're not a crazy dominator of the lane. I will say, against like melee heroes, if they do, walk up, and you do have your spear and your God's Rebuke, you can do a crap ton of damage. But just early on, when you only have one level, you just kind of get your farm. You do the normal laning stuff, just like your normal offlaner is going to do pretty much every time. And yeah, you pretty much use your abilities to secure last hits to try to zone people out away from creeps. So we can see he uses God's Rebuke to secure last hit, but also to damage and slow the enemies. So you kind of want to do as much as possible, as much as you can. You kind of want to combo those to get multiple uses out of them. Both of these abilities, to use them to secure last hit, to harass the enemy, to potentially position them, get them out of position with your spear or with your God's Rebuke. And you can just use these mainly as survivability tools early on. Like, if you feel like you're weak or they have potential to kill you, you can use them as survivability tools. Like we can see here, he's kind of using them in a way where he kind of used it to get the Terrorblade off of him with the God's Rebuke, and he used the spear to push the tree end back so that, they couldn't chase him into the trees anymore. And yeah, he's just using them mainly defensively because the Terrorblade pop meta. So basically he knows, okay, well, the Terrorblade's going to be doing a lot of damage. I just want to use these defensively. I don't want to get taking a lot of damage. I don't want to take a lot of damage now. So that's how he's using them. But you can see how he's constantly using, whenever he uses God's Rebuke, he's using it to secure a last hit plus get some harass damage out. Against weaker laners, like not necessarily Terrorblade, but against weaker laners, he'd probably be able to be a little bit more aggressive. But this is a pretty strong lane with Tree. Tree can be very aggressive, very tanky. Also, when Terrorblade pops meta, obviously he can be formidable as well. So he does have to be careful here. Otherwise, just typical normal laning stuff. But yeah, that's basically how you use these abilities. I'm going to fast forward here a little bit. We can see he tried to pin the Terrorblade to a tree, missed a little bit there, so that's a good example of how you can kind of miss with these abilities, and you have to be careful with that. But he's mainly using them to harass, get last hits, all of that kind of stuff. Just your typical, you know, normal offlaner stuff, because he's not super strong early on. The more levels he gets, the stronger he gets, because the more damage he's doing, so on and so forth. Now, this kill I do want to show you, because basically he has mana the entire time for God's Rebuke, but he doesn't use it until much later. So I wasn't sure when this kill was going to come. I just wanted to show you this. So basically, Tree has full health. Obviously, they would rather get the kill on the Terrorblade, but the Terrorblade is playing a little bit more passively. So first he uses his spear to get the stun out on the tree. Then he knows, because of the Willow stun coming out, that he doesn't need to use his God's Rebuke yet. And then as soon as the stun is over, then he uses God's Rebuke. And that's largely because if he used God's Rebuke early on, that slow that you get from it would have been... it kind of wouldn't have been used very much, because the stun was already applied, the root was already there, so he really wouldn't have needed it too much. So basically what I'm trying to say is you don't have a ton of mana. He only has 399 mana, so your spells are mana intensive. That's why you usually do go Soul Ring on this hero. And because of that, you want to really use your abilities intelligently. So with that slow that you get on your W there, on your God's Rebuke, you want to use that like when it's most effective. And if there's stuns that are going to come out from either you with the spear or from your support, you don't want to waste that slow, if that makes sense, because you don't want to stack that slow on the stun, because then it's just kind of negated, because they're stunned while they're slowed and it's really doing nothing. So just keep that in mind. That's the main thing I wanted to show you from the laning stage, how he is able to use his spells aggressively and how they're able to kill a tree with a good amount of damage there. But you can see also now he finally gets a Soul Ring, but other than that, he was only able to throw out a few spells before he uses all of his mana. Right there, I just wanted to show you that as well from the laning stage. I didn't tell you or didn't show you in the ability section, but the spear will only hit onto the first hero that it hits. So he tried to cancel the salve there, but the tree got in the way, so it hits the tree and pins the tree to the tree, and then it didn't cancel the salve there of the Terrorblade, so just keep that in mind. It also, the spear does only hit that one hero, the first one that it hits there, so keep that in mind. Other than that, yeah, we're just doing normal laning stage stuff, and let's fast forward here. He's level 4, but I'll just speed it up a little bit until we get to his level 6. So they're playing pretty aggressive with meta. Again, it's a very strong lane. He doesn't have a lot of regen. He's kind of trying to go straight for that armlet. So he's not looking to get super aggressive when he doesn't have a ton of mana. And his armlet's not done yet. He's also not 6. They look to get aggressive, but then the tusk comes down to help, so it's a, you know, it's a 3v2 right now. He tries to use God's Rebuke to help his Willow, but didn't really do much. But now he's finally 6, and he just sees the tree, he catches him out, pops a Soul Ring to get both of his abilities off, and now the tree's dead. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple, easy kill there for him. And you can see how he's leveling all of these abilities first, because they are the most effective abilities for getting kills once you have your level 6. And now this is just how you play the hero. You lane, you can get aggressive, you know, when you feel like it's necessary, or when you're capable of getting aggressive based on your support and what they're doing, etc. And then once you hit level 6, this is just how you play Mars, basically. You're just going to farm, potentially rotate, but as soon as your Arena of Blood is back off cooldown, you're going to look to get aggressive and use it. So we can see he has Arena here in like 2 seconds. Arena's up, he immediately pops it, destroys all the trees that the tree ant was hiding in, and then immediately goes there. So that's exactly how you want to be using Mars. And obviously they rotate in to get the kill. He's tanking a lot of tower shots, unfortunately. So he attempts to get the TP out, just barely doesn't, unfortunately. Obviously it's a little bit of a misplay, but still, you can see how he's basically just looking to get super aggressive. He's forcing the Tusk to rotate, so that's obviously good for the rest of his team. But yeah, he's kind of just laning normally, looking to get aggressive when he can, when he's able to, using his spells in combo to get harass, plus repositioning for safety, plus last hits. And then as soon as Arena is up, he's looking to constantly use that when it's off cooldown, transitioning into the early game here, out of the laning stage. Next, we jumped ahead here. He rotated to the top lane, kind of switched lanes with his carry, which happens every once in a while. He is going this armlet build like I talked about before. I would probably not go armlet if I was you. If I was going to play Mars in like a lower MMR game, I would just go for like the strictly damage build. I would go like Soul Ring, I'd go Phase Boots, I'd potentially go Deso unless somebody else on my team like a PA is going to buy it, these kinds of things. But that's mainly for like carrying the game by myself. And then we see here, he looks to gank this carry Terrorblade as soon as he's able to. As soon as somebody's out of position, you're very, very effective at killing people. So we can see there, they immediately go onto the Terrorblade, and he waits for his team, because I will say, as Mars, you can get solo kills on, like, supports, on potentially squishy mids or carries, these kinds of things. But on, like, a tanky Terrorblade, he has high armor, he has a decent amount of HP, he had his meta popped. You don't really want to just waste arena by popping it yourself and trying to kill them by yourself. Usually you at least want +1. You want somebody else there. So the Morphling obviously TPs in. That could have been anybody. It could have been the Nyx. It could have been any support. It could have literally been any +1 on his team. And that's kind of how you want to think about it. And obviously, if like there's an IO on the other team, potentially if you have an IO, that might not be the best +1. It's not an extra stun or anything, but the IO can do some damage. It's just more that you don't always want to, if you're trying to kill a tanky hero, do it by yourself, because sometimes you're just going to waste arena. You probably want to secure that kill. So try to use your arena with other heroes around to secure those kills. Like I said, if there's tanky people, that's what you need. If there's very squishy heroes, then sure, you can probably solo kill them, especially if you have Deso or other kind of damage items, these kinds of things. But just keep that in mind. That's something that you want to do. You don't want to waste arena, because it's a very, very effective tool. You can pretty much get a kill every single time it's off cooldown, before like 20 minutes, before people have blinks and BKBs and all that kind of stuff. So keep that in mind. So that's just what I wanted to show you. Pretty much you just want to be farming, pushing out lanes, looking to get aggressive wherever you can on the map when you have your ultimate up. Otherwise, you can still look to get aggressive. You can still use your main abilities, but you can largely look to farm unless you have your ultimate up, because it's a pretty low cooldown if we actually see here. It's not that high of a cooldown. Now, it's not, 40 seconds or anything like that, but it's up pretty frequently, so you can use it a lot. You can look to get kills, these kinds of things. Otherwise, you're farming, similar to other off lanes with big ultimates. So I jumped ahead a little bit here, and there's obviously a scrappy fight happening, but mainly what I wanted to show you is how sometimes you can think about these off laners like Tide, like Mars, these kinds of heroes. You can think about them as like initiation, right? Because they usually buy Blink. He has his Blink up. He's had it up for a few minutes now. They took another fight. It was very scrappy. It was weird. I didn't really want to show you that because it was kind of an odd fight with all the different ways that it worked. But basically what happens here is you can see they have vision. The Nyx goes in first. And then Mars comes in, Collapse comes in, follows up with the arena and the spear, and gives vision for his team of the entire area. They kill off the carry. And that's, basically just a one fight straight up from there because they killed off the carry. Then they kill the tree. He goes in on the tree. It's pretty much just a one fight after they killed the Terrorblade. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Obviously, they end up losing the Ember, which isn't great, but I think the Lina does end up dying here. Unless Io is able to save. We'll just see how it works out. I'm pretty sure she does. Yeah. So pretty much that's like a team wipe. Obviously, he does eventually go down to the Lina, but that's pretty much a team wipe. The Morph is still alive. It's just a one fight. But the whole point of what I wanted to show you there, and what I wanted to say for offlaners in general is, yes, you can be an initiation tool. You can jump in. You can use arena. You can, kill people right off the bat from no vision. But a lot of times, these kinds of heroes, like Tide even, like Mars, you want to jump in like Axe. You want to jump in kind of with vision that you already have. You want to know where they are. You want to know what abilities have been cast, so on and so forth. You want someone like an Ember, like a Nyx. Like, in this game, the Nyx is really the one that scouts, probably initiates. The one that is going to go in first, because he gives vision. He lets you have the right information, because your ultimate and your abilities, they're not like super long cooldown, but you can get maybe multiple spears, multiple God's Rebukes off. But if you miss them, if you mess the arena up, it's such a big deal. Where if you hit all those spells, you get the Terrorblade like we saw there, that's just a one fight immediately. So yes, you can look to initiate. Let's say it's a side lane gank, so on and so forth. You obviously know they're by themselves. That's great. That's fine. But in big team fights like that, one of the big things you want to make sure is that you have vision already, that someone else is going in first, hopefully, if they can, depending on, your lineups and stuff, that someone else is going in first, because you want to make sure that you're getting all your spells off. And that's kind of how these heroes work. They largely counter-initiate. They don't love to be the first initiation, especially because you have to jump in, you have to pop arena, you have to God's Rebuke, you have to use your spear. That takes a lot of time. There's a lot of cast animations. There's a lot of things that can go wrong there. Missed spells, BKBs being popped, blinks being used, saves coming in, all of those kinds of things. So it's always good to make sure that obviously you want to get your abilities off, you want to isolate somebody, you want to kill them because it gives great vision and those kinds of things. But you don't always want to be the first one in. Now, it just depends on the lineup. This lineup, they have a good you know, they have Ember, they have Nyx, they have other people that are going to go in, that are going to jump in, use remnants, you know, scout out, those kinds of things. Some games you will be the initiation. So then you just have to be very selective, very choosy about when you go in, you know, only go in when you have vision already, these kinds of things, when you know you can get your spells off, so on and so forth. So it's just one of those things that I wanted to mention. I wanted to point out that that was like a perfect example of how to take the fight, how to kind of counter initiate, or how to follow up on your team's initiation when you're kind of trying to take an aggressive fight on the enemy side of the map when you know they're all going to be there. So that's pretty much how to play Mars, counter initiating and those kinds of things, how to think about team fighting with Mars in general. Now Mars is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. This is the last thing that I'm going to show you here. And the last thing I wanted to show you is basically how you don't always have to initiate or to go in with your arena immediately. So we can see there, they're trying to take the mid tower. They're trying to push mid. They're smoked up. He kind of goes in a little bit, but then he ends up being able to, you know, retreat back, get the blink off, spear the Lina to the tree, and he only pops his BKB and his ultimate after the tree used his ult. And we can see then it traps everybody in the AoE. They're able to get pretty much a full team wipe there. The Lina does respawn because she had Aegis, but then they get the, you know, they get the follow-up kill on the IO, all these kinds of things. Pretty much a full team wipe with Lina respawning with Aegis and BKB running away. But you can see there how he didn't just like immediately pop the arena. He jumped in, he used his spear, and then once it was a good opportunity, once the entire team was kind of isolated in a position with that snowball save and so on, then he just basically popped the arena and there was no escape for the enemy. They were all stuck there. There was nothing they could do. They couldn't reposition. They were all stuck in a little clump. And that was the perfect example of how to use Mars in a way where you don't always have to pop arena immediately. Now, obviously, it's good if you need to get vision. You know, you don't have very good vision in the area. You want to pin somebody and isolate somebody out, all these kinds of things. A lot of times, popping arena first is a good idea. But sometimes jumping in and just spearing immediately is actually the best thing. So you don't let people get off BKB. You don't let people get their spells, get their blinks, all these kinds of things. Kind of like I said earlier when we were looking at the spear. So that's a very, very good example of how to use his abilities without having to pop his ultimate first. So otherwise, that's pretty much my Mars guide. That's pretty much how to play Mars. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. The hero does have a little bit of a skill shot. He's not the easiest hero in the world to play, but the concept is overall pretty simple. Your laning stage is very good. You have your abilities that can secure CS, can farm, can reposition, do a lot of damage, and then once your ultimate is up, once you have 6, you pretty much just look to fight constantly, especially once you get Blink Dagger, to use your ultimate, catch people out, kill people constantly, you know, team fight effectively, like I said, and then sometimes you can even, you know, use your abilities before you use your ultimate, before you use your arena to secure kills and those kinds of things, as we see the Morphling feed. But yeah, that's pretty much Mars. That's how to play Mars. Pretty easy hero. If you're looking to play offlane, I think Mars is a great hero to try to learn offlane with, or try to perfect offlane with. You can... You know, it might take a little bit to learn how to use all of his abilities or to get good at hitting them every time, but once you get good at that, I think that he is a great hero all around. So anyway, that's my Mars guide. I hope it helps everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, guys, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. Go to my Discord if you haven't already. You can request replay reviews there. You can also request them in the chat when I stream every Friday. I do replay reviews for anybody. There's no cost or anything like that. You can just request them, and I will do them. Also streaming more from Twitch, so go to my Twitch down below. Be sure to follow or sub if you can. If you want coaching, you can also go to my Patreon below and get coaching there. It's pretty straightforward. I have a bunch of coachees already. It's working out really great for them. So if you're looking for coaching, go there as well. That's available. And I'm very flexible, so I can do any time that you can as well. So that is the video. That's how to play Mars, guys. I hope you all enjoyed it. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.